Welcome to Kiss and Chapters, where every story begins with a spark and ends with a swoon. If you love heart-fluttering romances, unexpected twists, and characters you'll root for, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so I can keep bringing you more sweet, emotional, and unforgettable stories. Let's fall in love with every chapter, together. Chapter 1. The First Death. When Ruth opened her eyes, she wasn't in her cramped apartment anymore. Instead, a heavy velvet curtain hung before her bed, rich maroon with gold trimmings. A faint scent of lavender and candle wax filled the air. Her back ached, not from her usual office chair, but from sleeping on what felt like a bed made for royalty. She sat up abruptly. Her eyes darted around, ornate walls, towering bookshelves, and a vanity fit for a princess. A gilded mirror reflected a woman who wasn't her. She blinked. The woman in the mirror blinked too. Wait, who is that? Long dark hair cascading over delicate shoulders, eyes sharper than Ruth's ever were. She looked regal, cold even. But those eyes, those were hers. Sort of. Then a wave of nausea struck her and her head throbbed with a sharp pain. Images flooded her mind, memories that weren't hers. A grand ball. Scornful servants. A cold-eyed man named Samuel. And then, a sharp pain in her chest. Blood. So much blood. Ruth screamed and clutched her chest, but there was nothing there. No wound. No blood. What the hell is this? Then the door slammed open. A knight clad in black armor entered. His face was stern, unfamiliar, and cold. Lady Evelyne, he addressed her, but that wasn't her name. His Grace summons you. His Grace. Ruth echoed, still clutching her pounding head. The Duke of Valemont. You've been ordered to the throne hall. She tried to process it. Ruth had read a novel that sounded eerily similar to this. The Cold Duke and the Wicked Lady. The hated Villainess. She was named Evelyne. Ruth's blood ran cold. No way, she whispered. I've transmigrated into a novel? And not just any character. The Villainess who died by the male lead's sword in the first arc. The knight waited impatiently, so Ruth scrambled off the bed and followed. Her legs trembled with every step. She tried to recall the plot. The cold male lead was the Duke of Valemont, Samuel Valemont. In the novel, Evelyne was accused of treason for conspiring against him. In the throne hall there he was. Tall, commanding, dressed in dark ceremonial attire. His silver hair shimmered under the chandeliers, and his piercing gaze could freeze souls. The way he looked at her, like she was a stain on his carpet. He had to say something. Anything. But before she could, Samuel's cold voice rang out. Lady Evelyne, do you admit to conspiring with the enemy kingdom? What? No, I didn't. Silence. The knight seized her arms. She struggled, her heart racing in panic. Wait, I just woke up. I didn't do anything. I'm not even. I sentence you to death. She froze. No, wait. Samuel unsheathed his sword without hesitation. It glinted coldly, mercilessly. I'm innocent, she screamed. But the blade plunged into her chest. A sharp, burning pain. She felt her lungs collapsing, her body crumpling to the marble floor. She saw Samuel's indifferent gaze as her vision dimmed. I'm dying, she realized. I'm actually dying. This isn't a dream. Her last thought was bitter. What did I do to deserve this? Then everything went dark. She gasped, air flooding her lungs. She sat up, clutching her chest. She was back in the bed. Same velvet curtains. Same lavender scent. Same heavy dress. Ruth shook, sweating. What? I died. Right? But I'm here again. Then she heard a voice. Soft, almost whisper-like, but it echoed inside her head. 98 lives left. What? You are cursed. You have 99 lives, Ruth. Only one way to break it. She stumbled to the mirror, trembling. Who's there? Show yourself. Make Samuel Valemont fall in love with you sincerely. She stared, horrified. Fall in love? With the man who just killed me? The voice laughed, distant and sad. Fail and you'll die. Again and again. Until your last life fades away. Her knees gave out. She dropped to the floor. 98 deaths left. She didn't even get a chance to fight back. Fine, she whispered shakily, staring at her reflection. If that cold bastard is the key, then I'll make him fall for me, whether he likes it or not. And that's how Ruth's battle against death and Samuel's frozen heart began. Chapter 2: The Second Life. Ruth stared at herself in the mirror, her heart still pounding from the memory of the sword that pierced her chest. She ran her fingers over her body, no wound, no blood. But she remembered it vividly. His cold voice. The weight of the blade. Fang. 98 lives left. The voice had vanished, but the warning echoed in her mind like a curse. She had transmigrated into the body of Evelyne Ravencourt, the infamous villainess who was destined to die by the cold Duke's hands. She wasn't even in this world for one day before dying. And now she was back, reset to the morning before her death. She remembered the night would soon come, demanding her presence in the throne hall. But not this time. She wasn't about to die the same way. I need to avoid him, Ruth muttered to herself. She paced in the room, eyes darting around as if answers would spring from the lavish furniture. I'll escape the castle. That's it. Run away, start fresh, and avoid that psycho Samuel entirely. Just as she grabbed her cloak and made for the window, she heard the heavy boots outside her door. The night. Too late. The door opened with a familiar bang. Lady Evelyne, His Grace summons you. Ruth's heart nearly stopped, but she forced a smile. Tell His Grace I'm not feeling well. Actually, I think I'm dying, again. The knight didn't move. That wasn't a suggestion, she added, faking a cough. I'll be of no use to His Grace if I collapse before even seeing him. He stared at her, suspicious. But before he could argue, Ruth dashed for the window. She threw it open and climbed out onto the ledge. The knight shouted behind her, "Hi, lady." But Ruth was already scrambling down the vines, her slippers slipping against the stone. Okay, just don't fall, Ruth, don't. Her foot slipped. She let out a yelp as her body tumbled down. Branches scratched her skin, and for a brief moment she thought she might have made it. But her head hit something hard and she blacked out. She woke up. Back in the bed. The velvet curtain. The lavender scent. 97 lives left. She groaned. What? That counts. I didn't even see the Duke this time. She collapsed back onto the pillows, arms spread out. Escaping is out of the question. What's plan B? That morning the knight arrived again, expecting resistance. But this time Ruth greeted him with a bright, unsettling grin. I'm ready, she announced, smoothing down her dress. The knight blinked, clearly surprised. On the way to the throne hall, Ruth racked her brain for strategies. She could just explain herself, prove her innocence, maybe she could survive this time. Then she saw him. Samuel Valemont. He was even more intimidating now that she knew how easily he could end her. Tall, silver-haired, his dark uniform emphasizing his broad shoulders and imposing presence. His eyes, sharp, calculating, cold. She swallowed hard. Lady Evelyne, he began. Do you admit to conspiring with the enemy? Ruth raised her hands. No. I swear, Your Grace, I've never conspired against you. I'm innocent. Samuel's eyes narrowed. You claimed that before. No, I didn't. That was a different me, she mumbled. Listen, you're making a huge mistake. He motioned for his sword and Ruth panicked. Wait. I can prove my innocence. Then speak. She thought fast. Because I love you. The hall fell into stunned silence. Even the knight behind her choked on his breath. Samuel stared at her like she'd just confessed to loving a rock. You what? Ruth forced her lips into a wobbly smile. I'm madly, desperately in love with you, Your Grace. There's no way I'd betray you. His expression didn't change. Fascinating, he muttered, stepping closer. Yet your love wasn't mentioned in the confession letter we seized. Confession letter? Wait, what? He raised his hand and a servant presented a parchment. Ruth squinted at the elegant handwriting. Evelyne's, handwriting. A letter admitting her alliance with the enemy. Is this your declaration of love as well? Samuel asked icily. Ruth's throat dried. That's a forgery. I swear. Samuel's eyes gleamed dangerously. I hate liars. Then his sword flashed, and once again Ruth's world went black. She gasped awake. Back in bed. 96 lives left. She screamed into her pillow. This is going to be harder than I thought. Chapter 3. The shameless approach. Ruth lay in bed, glaring up at the velvet canopy like it personally offended her. 96 lives left, she muttered, groaning. 3 deaths. 3 humiliating deaths. The first, stabbed in the heart. The second, fell off a window like an idiot. The third, confessed fake love and still got stabbed. She buried her face in the pillows and screamed. What the hell does this man want? If honesty didn't work, if running didn't work, if pretending to love him didn't work, then maybe it was time for full shamelessness. She bolted up, fire in her eyes. Fine. I'll flirt, grovel, kiss up, whatever it takes. If I die again, I'm at least going down swinging. The next morning, when the familiar knock came at her door, Ruth opened it with a radiant smile. Morning, sir. Night guy. What's your name again? The knight blinked. It's... Never mind. It doesn't matter. Let's go see his grace, shall we? She linked her arm with his, shocking the poor man, and sauntered down the hall humming a tune. When the throne hall doors opened, Ruth stepped inside with a grace that was entirely fake. And there he was. Samuel Valemont. Silver-haired, broad-shouldered, dressed like death himself. He didn't even have to speak before she plastered a dazzling smile on her face. Your Grace. Ruth chirped, stepping forward like they were old friends. You're looking particularly icy today. Very chic. Samuel blinked. For the first time his cold facade seemed mildly confused. Lady Evelyne, he said slowly. You seem different. Oh, that. I've had an epiphany. A new lease on life, she declared, twirling dramatically. I've realized I've never appreciated your, jawline. Sharp enough to cut my expectations. The hall went silent. The knight stared in shock. A servant dropped a goblet somewhere. Samuel stared at her like she'd grown horns. You're mocking me, he said. No. I'm complimenting you. Truly. She took a few steps closer, heart pounding but determined. I mean, look at you. Who wouldn't fall in love with the Duke of Valemont? Dashing, dangerous, deadly. You sound like you have a death wish. Ruth laughed nervously. Been there, done that. Thrice actually. Samuel's eyes sharpened. What? Oops. He waved it off. Slip of the tongue. Then she marched up to him within reach of his sword and whispered, Tell you what, Your Grace. Let me prove my sincerity. He raised a brow. How? She smiled slyly. I'll stay by your side for a week. No conspiracies, no schemes. If I do anything suspicious, you can kill me on the spot. There were murmurs in the hall. Samuel studied her for a long, tense moment. You're this eager to prove yourself? He asked. Desperate times, Your Grace. Desperate, adorable times, she replied with a wink. His lips twitched, just a fraction, but Ruth caught it. Was that a smile? Fine, Samuel said, voice cold but curious. You have 1 week. But if you slip, you'll kill me. He leaned in slightly. I'll enjoy it. Ruth grinned, heart hammering. Deal. Back in her chambers, Ruth collapsed onto her bed, limbs weak. I can't believe that worked. She had 7 days to survive under his nose. 7 days to prove her innocence, or at least not die. 96 lives left. But I'll make it 95. If it kills me. And so the game began. The Villainess and the Cold Duke. A battle of wits, flirting, and one very cursed life. Chapter 4. The Duke's Pet Project. For the first time since she woke up in this damned story, Ruth wasn't dead by nightfall. She paced her lavish room, barely able to believe it. 7 days. Just survive 7 days, she repeated like a mantra. Then I'll figure out how to make that ice block fall for me. But first she needed to not get stabbed. The next morning, Ruth was summoned to the Duke's private study. Not the throne hall, not the dungeon, but the study. It was a good sign. Probably. She stepped in to find Samuel Valemont seated by the window, rays of morning light catching the silver of his hair. He was reading documents, utterly ignoring her presence. Good morning, Your Grace. Ruth said cheerfully. I've come as promised. Your weekly dose of Evelyne Ravencourt at your service. Samuel flipped a page. You're unusually chipper for someone under a death sentence. Well, I'm trying this new thing called not dying. It's great for my skin, she said, strolling closer. So, what's the plan? Are we going horseback riding? Taking a stroll in the garden? Or is this where you interrogate me and decide where to stab me next? He finally looked up, cold eyes meeting hers. You're strange. Thank you. I take pride in that. Most people beg for mercy. Or they cry. I'm all out of tears, Your Grace. So I thought, why not annoy you into sparing me instead? There was a pause, then the faintest twitch of his lips. Not quite a smile, but close enough to make Ruth's heart skip. Samuel leaned back in his chair. Very well. Let's test your sincerity. Go on. You will accompany me today. I have affairs to attend to, disputes to mediate, reports to read, land surveys to review. You'll observe everything. Say a word out of line or do anything suspicious and you die. Ruth's stomach twisted, but she nodded with bravado. Deal. I'm great at observing. I've binge-watched entire dramas without blinking. Samuel frowned. What is binge-watched? She froze. Right. This was a medieval fantasy world. Oh. Just an expression. It means I have excellent stamina. His eyes narrowed in suspicion. But he said nothing more and stood. Follow me then. The day was exhausting. Samuel wasn't just a cold duke, he was an efficient, merciless one. He mediated land disputes with a glare that made grown men tremble. He read reports like his life depended on it, making sharp comments that even his advisors feared. Ruth trailed after him, watching carefully, occasionally throwing in a, very wise, Your Grace. Or a, you really are the smartest man in the room. At one point, Samuel shot her a sidelong glance. You flatter too easily. Maybe. But you can't kill me if you're flattered, right? She grinned. To her surprise, his lip twitched again, like a man resisting a chuckle. By afternoon, Ruth was sweating and her feet ached, but she was still alive. More importantly, she was seeing a side of Samuel she never noticed in the novel. He was cold, yes, but not unkind. He treated his subordinates with fairness, and his decisions were often merciful despite his frosty demeanor. And once, when a servant girl tripped, Samuel helped her up without a word. He's not heartless, Ruth thought, watching curiously. Just closed off. That evening in the study again, Ruth found herself alone with him. Samuel sipped his tea, then glanced her way. You've been quiet. Just thinking, she said honestly. You're not as scary as people think. His brow rose. I will stabbed you to death 2 days ago. Yeah, but that's the job, right? Can't hold grudges in politics, she joked weakly. He stared at her, expression unreadable. Then he said, Why are you really acting like this? She looked at him, weighed her options, and decided to play half-truth. Because I don't want to die again. She smiled faintly. And because, maybe I think there's more to you than being a walking executioner. Silence stretched between them. Then Samuel stood, the chair scraping back. I don't know what game you're playing, Evelyne, but I'm curious enough to let you live, for now. He walked to the door, paused, then added without looking back. Be ready tomorrow. Let's see how long your sincerity lasts. And then he was gone. Ruth let out the breath she'd been holding. Day 1 survived. 6 more to go. But for the first time she wasn't just surviving, she was starting to see the man behind the curse. And perhaps there was a crack in the Duke's icy heart. Chapter 5. Tea with the Duke and a near-death accident. By the time the second day began, Ruth was exhausted, but alive. That was progress. She dressed in a simple yet elegant gown, determined to look cooperative rather than villainous. No dark makeup, no sharp heels, just a soft color palette and a disarming smile. As she waited in the study, the door opened and Samuel Valemont stepped in, eyes as cold as always. You're early, he remarked. I'm punctual. It's part of my new survival strategy, Ruth chirped. Samuel's gaze lingered on her attire. You look different. Different how? Prettier? Softer? Less stab-worthy, she teased. His mouth twitched again, that almost smile she was starting to crave. We'll be having tea in the West Garden, he said. Accompany me. Ruth perked up. Tea? In a garden? That's dangerously romantic, Your Grace. Should I be flattered or worried? Samuel didn't reply, but the tips of his ears were suspiciously pink as he turned to leave. The West Garden was a stunning display of roses, trimmed hedges and marble statues. A delicate table was set under a vine-covered gazebo with tea already prepared. To Ruth's surprise, they weren't alone. A small boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, sat at the table, legs swinging off the chair. He had shaggy dark hair and eyes like storm clouds. "This is Leo," Samuel introduced shortly. The boy stared at Ruth with suspicion, just like his guardian. "And who is this little lord?" Ruth asked sweetly. Samuel didn't answer, but the boy huffed. "I'm not a lord. I'm just Leo." "Then hello, just Leo. I'm Ruth." She caught herself. "I mean Evelyne. But you can call me Ruth if you like." The boy's brows furrowed. "You're weird." "Thank you. I take that as a compliment." Samuel watched silently as Ruth smiled and poured herself tea, making exaggerated sounds of delight just to amuse the kid. Slowly, Leo's guarded expression began to fade. After some moments, Samuel asked, "You're good with children?" Ruth shrugged. "I was an only child, but I like kids. They're honest. Brutal but honest." "Honesty is a rare trait," Samuel said softly. It was the first genuine thing he'd said, not coded in threat or suspicion. Ruth smiled at him. "Then I'll try to be that rare trait for you, Your Grace." He looked away, sipping his tea with an unreadable expression. Later, as they walked back through the garden, Leo ran ahead, chasing a butterfly. Ruth watched, her chest warming at the sight. Then she heard Samuel's low voice. "He was my late brother's son," he said quietly. Ruth blinked, surprised that he was telling her this. "The court wanted to send him away. They saw him as a weakness," Samuel added. "So I took him in." Ruth's eyes softened. "You do have a heart after all." Before Samuel could respond, Leo's shout cut through the air. "Look out!" A large marble urn from a nearby pedestal wobbled precariously. Leo had accidentally nudged the stand, and the massive stonework began to topple, right toward him. Without thinking, Ruth sprinted. She shoved Leo aside just as the urn crashed where he had stood. A sharp pain shot through her leg. A piece of broken stone had grazed her thigh deeply. She hissed, collapsing to the ground. Samuel was there in an instant, eyes wide, grabbing her arm. "Why did you do that?" he demanded. Ow, thought it was obvious," Ruth gritted out. "He's a kid. I'm not about to let a marble grave marker flatten him." Samuel's eyes flicked to Leo, who was safe but crying, then back to Ruth. His hand gripped hers tightly. "Idiot," he muttered. "That was reckless." "You're welcome," Ruth bit out with a pained grin. He tore part of his cloak and pressed it to her wound, surprisingly gentle. His eyes, normally cold, were burning with something else now. Not quite anger. Not quite confusion. Something warmer. Hours later, in her chambers, a servant treated her wound while she rested. Then the door opened and Samuel entered alone. "You saved Leo," he said. "Yeah, well, somebody had to." He was silent for a while, then said, "You're strange. But not as detestable as I thought." "High praise," Ruth chuckled. He approached her bedside, eyes searching hers. "You could have died." "I've died before," she said softly, then quickly corrected herself. "I mean, it's just a joke." Samuel frowned. But then, to her utter shock, he muttered, "Thank you." It was soft. Almost inaudible. But it was there. And Ruth smiled to herself even as her leg throbbed in pain. Progress. Chapter 6. Cracks in the Ice. Samuel Valemont didn't dream. At least not until her. That night after Ruth, no Evelyne, had thrown herself in harm's way to save Leo, Samuel slept restlessly. His mind was no longer the cold, silent place it used to be. Instead, he dreamt of her eyes. Not just Evelyne's usual sharp, conniving gaze, but eyes that sparkled, laughed, cried, loved. And the strangest part? He felt like he'd seen those eyes before. In every dream she was calling his name. Samuel. But it wasn't with fear or disdain. She whispered it like a secret, as if she'd known him forever. When Samuel woke in a sweat, the moonlight creeping through his windows, he found himself gripping his sheets tightly. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, breathing heavily. His heart was racing. And it was because of her. The next morning, Samuel stood outside Ruth's chambers, staring at the door in silence. He wasn't supposed to care. She was Evelyne Ravencourt, the woman he was meant to execute. The woman who was rumored to be vile, manipulative, treasonous. Yet, she had risked her life to save Leo. She smiled like a fool but laughed like she meant it. And worst of all, she wasn't afraid of him. No one ever met his eyes without trembling. But she smiled. Even when bleeding, she smiled. Samuel clenched his fists. "I'm just curious," he muttered to himself. "That's all." So he knocked. Ruth stirred in bed when the door opened. She half expected a servant, but no, it was Samuel himself. "Your Grace," she groaned, pulling herself up. "Wow. You in my room again? This is starting to feel scandalous." Samuel ignored her teasing, stepping closer with that perpetual frown. "How is your leg?" he asked. Ruth blinked, caught off guard by his concern. "It still hurts. But I'm alive, so that's a win." "Why did you do it?" he asked quietly. "You asked me that yesterday," she chuckled. "The answer's the same. I'm not a monster. And Leo's a kid." His frown deepened. He opened his mouth, then closed it as if unsure what to say. "Did you need something else?" Ruth asked, tilting her head. Samuel stared. For a moment, the memory of his dream flashed behind his eyes. Her calling his name. Her smile. "I dreamt of you," he blurted before he could stop himself. Ruth's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" He stiffened, looking away. "Forget it. It's nothing." "Oh no, no, no," she said, sitting up straighter despite the pain. "You can't just drop 'I dreamt of you' and expect me to move on. That's the most exciting thing I've heard since arriving here." Samuel's ears flushed faintly. It was strange. "You were different." "Different how?" Ruth's heart thudded. Samuel shook his head. "Forget it. Dreams mean nothing." "Unless it's fate," she teased, waggling her brows. "Maybe I'm haunting your subconscious." He stared at her, and for a flicker of a second Ruth thought she saw hesitation. Like he wasn't sure if that was a joke. "Rest up," he muttered, turning away. "You'll accompany me again once you're healed." "Looking forward to it, Your Grace," she called after him. When the door shut, Ruth's smile slowly faded. Samuel was dreaming of her. She hadn't expected that. Is the curse affecting him too? Or worse, was she starting to get through to him? She sank back into her pillows, her leg throbbing but her mind racing. "Cracks in the ice," she whispered to herself. "Now I just need to break it wide open. And maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to die 95 more times after all." Chapter 7. The Duke's Hidden Memories. Samuel Valemont was a man who lived by logic, discipline, and precision. Which was why the dreams unsettled him. They weren't just fleeting images, they felt like memories. But they couldn't be. Because in his waking life he had never seen Evelyne, no Ruth, look at him with warmth. He had never heard her laugh that way, so free and familiar. Yet in his dreams she did. That morning he stood in his study, staring absently at a stack of reports. But the words blurred, replaced by flashes in his mind. Ruth smiling up at him under a starry sky. Her fingers brushing his cheek. Her tearful whisper, "Don't forget me, okay?" He shook his head violently as if that could dispel them. But even when his eyes were open, the echo of her voice clung to him. "Have we met before?" Meanwhile, in her chambers, Ruth finally limped her way to the garden, stubbornness propelling her through the pain. She needed to keep pushing forward while she still had this window of progress. She found Leo chasing butterflies again. The boy lit up when he saw her. "Miss Ruth, your leg's better." "Barely," she winced, lowering herself onto a bench. "But I'll take it." "What's that?" Leo pointed to her necklace. Ruth looked down. She hadn't noticed it before, but around Evelyne's neck was a delicate chain with a teardrop-shaped gem. She tilted her head. "I don't remember this being here." She ran her fingers over it, and for a second, a flash. A brief memory, not her own. Samuel, standing before her, sliding this necklace onto her neck. His expression gentle, eyes soft. She gasped, dropping the gem as her chest tightened. "What was that?" "That wasn't me, but it was me. Miss Ruth." Leo tugged her sleeve. She forced a smile. "It's nothing, kiddo. Just remembered something important." Later that day, Samuel summoned her again. This time he stared at her with more intensity than usual. "You said before that I'm not as cold as I seem," he began. Ruth nodded slowly. "Because you're not." He stepped closer, eyes searching hers as though trying to find something familiar. "Why do you feel familiar to me?" Her breath caught. "Familiar. I dream of you," he admitted quietly. But not like this. Not as the scheming Evelyne everyone warned me about. Ruth's heart thumped painfully in her chest. Could he be remembering the past loops? Maybe, in another life we were friends, she offered cautiously. Samuel's gaze was unreadable, but he didn't laugh or scoff. Instead he murmured, "Another life?" For the first time Ruth saw something in his eyes. Not suspicion, not disdain. But yearning. A flicker of something tender long buried. She swallowed hard. Maybe we were something more. Silence. Samuel stepped back, collecting himself. "You say strange things. You're the one dreaming of me," she teased lightly, though her pulse raced. He shook his head as if to clear it. "You're a puzzle I can't figure out, Ruth." Her heart skipped. He said Ruth, not Evelyne. And that meant something. That night, as Samuel tried to sleep, he dreamt again. But this time the dream was clearer. Ruth's voice called his name, not as Evelyne but as someone he'd loved. She was crying, reaching for him. "I'll wait for you, even if it takes 100 lives." He shot awake, chest heaving. For the first time in years Samuel felt afraid. Because a part of him didn't want to wake up to a world without her. Chapter 8. The 50th Death. Ruth wasn't sure when she lost count of how many times she died. She stopped keeping tally after the 30th reset. Whether it was poison in her tea, an assassin's blade, or Samuel's own sword, death had become routine. But each time she opened her eyes to the same velvet curtains she felt heavier. A little more hollow. And now, on her 50th life, Ruth stood at the edge of the palace balcony, staring at the star-filled sky, her heart aching. "I'm tired. Tired of waking up alone. Tired of pretending to smile at Samuel. Tired of fighting a fate that refused to change." Every time she made progress, the world reset with her death. Samuel would forget her smiles, her jokes, her bravery. It was like trying to fill a cup with a hole at the bottom. The stars blurred in her vision, not from distance but from tears. How much longer can I keep this up? Ruth. Her breath caught. She turned around. Samuel stood there alone, his silver hair catching the moonlight. His face was softer than usual, his eyes less cold. "You've been quiet lately," he said, stepping closer. "I'm just thinking," she whispered. "Of what?" She smiled faintly. "Of how nice the stars look. It makes me wonder if they look the same in another life." Samuel stared at her, puzzled, as if something stirred inside him. Something he couldn't name. "I keep dreaming of you," he confessed. "And I don't understand why. In those dreams you're crying. And I feel afraid." Ruth's throat tightened. "Afraid of what?" "That you'll disappear." He sucked in a breath. "I don't know why I feel that way," he said, stepping closer. "It makes no sense. But I don't want you to disappear." Her heart trembled. For the first time in all her lives, Samuel looked genuinely lost and vulnerable. She laughed softly, a bitter sound. "You always say that," she muttered. "What?" "In every life you say that. Right before I die again." He froze, staring at her. "But you always forget," she whispered. "And I have to start all over. Over and over, and I'm so tired, Samuel." He frowned. "Ruth, what are you talking about?" She stepped closer, tears finally spilling. "I'm cursed, Samuel. I've died 50 times. And I'll keep dying unless you love me." His eyes widened. She laughed weakly. "Sounds ridiculous, right? But it's true." He reached out, hesitated, then cupped her cheek. His hand was warm. "I believe you," he whispered. She gasped. "I don't know why, but I believe you." Her lips quivered. "You'll forget again when I die." "Then don't die," he said, voice firm. "Stay with me." She wanted to believe him. She really did. But the curse didn't care about want or belief. She shook her head. "It doesn't work like that." Samuel pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly against his chest. "Then I'll find a way," he murmured into her hair. "I'll remember. I promise." Ruth closed her eyes. She wanted to stay. She wanted to believe his promise. But deep down she felt it. The curse wasn't done with her yet. And that night, as the sky darkened, Ruth knew she wouldn't wake up to his arms. She would wake up alone again. But for the first time, Samuel's embrace lingered, like a memory fighting to survive the reset. Chapter 9. Breaking the Curse. Ruth braced herself for the familiar sight of velvet curtains, for the cold echo of the morning bells. But when she opened her eyes, she wasn't in her bed. Instead, she was still standing on the balcony, the night sky stretched above. And in front of her, Samuel. His hands still held her cheeks, his silver eyes locked on hers. Her breath caught. "I'm still here." Samuel's brow furrowed. "You didn't disappear." She stared, shaking. "But I always die by now. It's supposed to reset." His hand trembled against her skin. "I don't want you to die." And then, in a voice lower and rougher than she'd ever heard, he said, "I remember." Ruth's heart stopped. "What?" "I remember you dying." And again. His voice broke. "I couldn't stop it. But this time, when I saw your tears, I knew I couldn't lose you again." Ruth's tears spilled anew. You remember the resets?" "Fragments. Flashes. I don't know how, but every time I saw you, something felt wrong, like I'd already killed you. Like I was meant to stop it." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I don't know how long we've been trapped in this, but I don't want to forget you again." Ruth clutched his tunic, sobbing. "I thought I'd have to die 100 times before you'd remember me. I won't let that happen." And then, without hesitation, Samuel kissed her. Not with cold precision, but with desperation, like a man trying to stake a claim against the cruelty of fate. Warmth rushed through Ruth's body, her curse like a shadow trying to resist the light. She felt it, the curse tightening, struggling to pull her away. But Samuel's grip only tightened. "Stay with me," he whispered. "If love is what it takes, then I'll keep loving you, over and over, until the curse breaks." The air shimmered around them, the stars above glowing brighter. The weight in Ruth's chest began to lift. The ache, the fatigue, the crushing despair. She gasped as a surge of light surrounded them, warm and golden. A soft voice whispered in her ear. "The curse is broken." Her knees gave out, but Samuel caught her, holding her as if he'd never let go again. When she woke the next morning, Ruth's body felt lighter. No velvet curtains, she was still on the balcony, wrapped in Samuel's cloak. Samuel sat beside her, awake, watching her like he was afraid she'd vanish. "You're still here," he said softly. She smiled weakly. "Yeah, I'm still here." He brushed her hair back, his gaze softer than she'd ever seen. "I remember everything," he admitted. "Every time you died. Every word you said. I'm sorry I made you go through that." "You didn't know," she whispered. "But I do now," he said firm. "And I'll never forget again." Ruth reached up, cupping his cheek. "We did it." He smiled faintly. "You did it." She chuckled. "You helped." And then with a grin. "Now, I expect a very long apology and lots of desserts for 50 deaths worth of suffering." Samuel laughed, an actual warm laugh. "You'll have all the desserts in the empire." They sat together, watching the morning sun rise. The curse was broken. The deaths were over. And for the first time, Ruth was truly alive. With him. Chapter 10, Epilogue, Happily Alive After. Spring came early to the Duchy of Valemont. The gardens bloomed in brilliant colors, the skies clear and warm. And for once, Ruth could walk through them without fear of sudden death. She strolled along the flower paths, her hands securely wrapped in Samuel's. Every step still felt like a miracle. She would glance at him just to be sure he was still here, still real, still remembering. "You're staring again," Samuel murmured, though there was a soft smile tugging at his lips. "Just checking if you'll forget me," she teased. "I'd forget my own name before I forget you," he replied simply. Ruth flushed. Damn him for saying it so casually. At the gazebo, Leo waited, already seated with a plate of sweets. When he spotted them, he grinned and waved. "Aunt Ruth. Uncle Sam." Ruth laughed. "Uncle Sam? That's new." Samuel groaned quietly but didn't correct the boy. Ruth sat beside Leo and stole a tart off his plate. "I'll accept being Aunt Ruth, if it means I get pastries." "Uncle Sam ordered all these just for you," Leo bragged. Ruth blinked at Samuel, who looked away with a faint blush. "You said you wanted desserts." 50 lives worth of desserts," Ruth reminded. Samuel raised a brow. "Do you plan to collect interest on that?" "Oh, absolutely." He chuckled softly, then reached across the table to take her hand. The sun lit his silver hair, his eyes no longer cold but warm, soft, full of memories both painful and cherished. "Thank you for not giving up," he said quietly. She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for finally remembering." Leo scrunched his nose. "Are you two gonna kiss again? That's gross." Ruth laughed while Samuel simply smirked. "Get used to it," Samuel told the boy, pulling Ruth closer. "I intend to keep her close." Ruth leaned into his shoulder, her heart light for the first time in, 50 lives. That night, as they sat by the balcony where it all began, Ruth looked up at the stars. "You know, I've seen these stars 50 times, she said softly. "But they never felt as bright as they do now." Samuel kissed her temple. "Because this time you're not alone." She smiled. "I never want to reset again." "You won't. I'll make sure of it." And as the stars twinkled above, Ruth believed him. Because she was finally free. Finally loved. Finally alive. Bonus chapter. Samuel's POV. The first time he remembered fully. Samuel had always prided himself on his composure. Yet that night, as he watched Ruth weep under the stars, saying she was tired, confessing her countless deaths, something inside him cracked. And then he remembered. Not just glimpses or scattered feelings, but everything. He remembered the first time he killed her, believing she was the villainess plotting against the Empire. Her eyes wide with fear. Her blood staining his hands. Then the second time when she tried to run and he hunted her down. She begged him to listen. He didn't. The third time when she tried to gain his trust, laughing awkwardly with pastries in hand. He didn't listen then either. More. She died 50 times. And he watched, helpless in every memory, as she smiled in the face of death, just so he might one day understand. When he kissed her that night, it wasn't just desperation. It was apology. It was promise. It was love. As the memories flooded in, Samuel broke the kiss and whispered against her trembling lips. "I remember you." Ruth stared at him, eyes shimmering. "You do. I remember every time I failed to see you. Every time I let you die." His voice shook. He, the cold Duke, the executioner, was shaking. She cupped his cheek, tears spilling freely. "You remembered me." "I don't know why I couldn't before," he admitted, voice raw. "But not this time. I won't forget again." He kissed her tears away, holding her like she was the only thing tethering him to reality. "I'm sorry for every life I killed you. For every time I made you cry." Ruth smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. "Then stay with me in this one." "I swear it," he said. "No more resets. No more deaths. You're mine, and I'll prove it in every life that follows." And for the first time, Samuel Valemont, the cold Duke, knew love. As he remembered. And he would never forget again. Extra 1. The curse of 99 deaths. The truth behind the cycle. It wasn't fate. It wasn't just misfortune. It was a curse, deliberate, ancient, and cruel. On the night of Ruth's 50th death, when the curse finally cracked, a strange dream came to her. A soft voice echoed in her mind, familiar yet distant. "So, you've made it this far." In her dream, she stood in a dark, endless void. And from the shadows stepped a woman cloaked in silver mist, eyes glowing like moons. "Who are you?" Ruth asked. The woman smiled sadly. "I am the one who cursed you." Ruth's fists clenched. "Why? What did I do to deserve dying 99 times?" "You didn't," the woman said simply. "You're not even supposed to be here." Ruth's breath caught. "What? You weren't born into this world, Ruth. Your soul came from somewhere else. The fabric of fate rejected you, but not entirely. So the world's magic. It punished you. Repeatedly." Ruth staggered back. "I transmigrated? Like in the novels?" "Yes," the woman said. "But fate's balance here is rigid. A foreign soul means instability. To correct the error, fate reset your life each time your death occurred within the orbit of the Duke, the man who was supposed to destroy you." "Samuel," Ruth whispered. "Your proximity to him triggered the resets," the woman continued. "Because his fate was tightly bound to the real Evelyne Ravencourt. But you are not her. So the world punished the mismatch by killing you over and over." Ruth's throat dried. "Then why did it stop now?" "Because," the woman smiled gently, "the Duke's soul finally remembered you." Ruth stared, breathless. "The moment he loved you, not as the villainess, not as a pawn, but as Ruth," the curse cracked. "His memories defied the fabric of fate. His heart rewrote your story. Tears pooled in Ruth's eyes. All it took was one heart refusing to forget. The woman nodded. That is the power of love in a cursed world. Ruth stepped forward. Then, who are you really? The woman's smile turned bittersweet. I was once like you, a soul from another world. But I failed to break my own curse. So now I guide those like you so they won't fade as I did. Ruth's heart ached. Will I forget you? You will, the woman whispered. But live well, Ruth. Your story is yours now. As the void faded, Ruth woke in her bed, Samuel's arm around her waist, his breath warm on her neck. She smiled through the tears. I'll live this life fully. For me, and for her. The curse was broken not by magic, but by love that refused to forget. Extra 2. Why the Duke had to kill Evelyne. Long before Ruth ever woke up inside Evelyne Ravencourt's body, there was a story already written. One where the Duke of Valemont was never meant to love the Villainess. Evelyne, in the original plot, was the daughter of the Marquis of Ravencourt, a house infamous for its ambitions to seize the throne. Behind the glittering facade of nobility, her family plotted rebellion, forging secret alliances, stockpiling weapons, and stirring dissent against the royal family. The Duke of Valemont, Samuel, was the crown's sharpest sword, the warden of the north, protector of the realm, and the one assigned to eliminate traitors. The emperor himself summoned Samuel with a direct order. Ravencourt plots treason. Their daughter, Evelyne, is the key player. She seduces nobles into her pocket. Execute her, publicly. Make an example of her. Samuel never questioned imperial orders. Duty over emotion. Honor over sentiment. He investigated and confirmed reports. Evelyne Ravencourt bribed ministers, manipulated court politics, and allegedly masterminded poisonings within the court. But here was the tragedy: the evidence was manufactured. What no one knew, including Samuel, was that the real Evelyne had been framed by her own father. The Marquis, fearing discovery, arranged for his daughter to be the scapegoat should the crown catch wind of his rebellion. In the original timeline, Evelyne begged for mercy, protested her innocence, but no one, not even the cold Duke, listened. He executed her by his own hand, believing her death would safeguard the realm. But when Ruth transmigrated into Evelyne's body, everything shifted. She wasn't the scheming villainess from the reports. She was awkward, spirited, and bizarrely clueless about politics, nothing like the woman the Empire had condemned. And yet, the events still pushed the Duke to kill her. Because every time Ruth made a wrong step, every time the Marquis of Ravencourt plotted anew, Samuel's instincts and duty overrode his growing doubts. In every reset, fate rebalanced itself, ensuring the story reached the same conclusion. Evelyne must die by the Duke's hand. The curse fed on that inevitability, that Ruth, in Evelyne's skin, was destined to meet Samuel's blade. Until Samuel remembered. Until love cracked the script that fate kept writing. Now, with his memories restored, Samuel privately vowed to destroy the Ravencourt patriarch, to uncover the truth behind the rebellion, and to clear Evelyne's name. Because Ruth wasn't just his love, she was the woman he'd wronged across 50 lives. And this time the story was no longer in fate's hands.